those stories of people passing by a graveyard, taking pictures, or playing the game where you hold your breath while passing a graveyard, and you'll be haunted for the rest of your life. Well, the story is different. My name is Travis, and I've done something horrible. Or at least it all started with me and my friends Josh, Brian, Blaine, Ben, and Blake. We were bored one day, and Blake suggested that we do something scary, something to get our adrenaline pumping. Without a doubt, we all agreed in about an hour. Blake had went to some website on his phone that had some local horror fun, but turns out there was a local graveyard of Newberry, which was supposedly had a dead man with the name of James A. Boltman. Some neighborhood kids made a game with his grave called Sinister 6. My friends and I thought it was fake, but we went and thought, what the hell? We had nothing better to do to get some adrenaline, so as stupid as this idea was, we had no idea.
Brian found the coordinates of the graveyard. As we arrived, I could already feel that this was a bad idea. Before I go any further, let me explain the rules of the game. There must be 6 players. After arriving to James' grave, count to 6 with no interruptions. Everyone participating must give a blood sample. After the count of 6, run and hide. Everyone gave a blood sample, but me, of course. I was the one who was too scared to draw blood. The guys argued, "Oh, come on, Travis. Yeah, man, we gotta have 6 people. It doesn't even hurt." I stood shaking my head, though, when I realized something. Blake wasn't in the group. I realized this too late. Very unexpected. Blake yelled as he snuck up from behind me and jabbed me in the arm with a sharp pin, drawing blood. Sneaky bastard. I went to take the needle from him, but the rest of the guys held me back while Blake put out the pen with my blood on it, in the ground above the grave. I was a player now. I, being curious, wanted to see what would happen anyway. We lined up in front of the grave, and Blaine started counting. 1. At this moment, I wasn't feeling very nervous. 2. The sky had started to turn black, oddly enough. 3. The seconds started to feel like minutes and hours. 4. Now I was getting nervous. 5. As the suspense was at its peak, I yelled, "Stop!" And the rules said no interruptions, so Blaine just yelled, 6. I was the first to run. My friends treated the game like it was a joke, so I heard was their laughter and slow pat of feet on the ground. The more I ran, the more it felt useless. I had no sense of direction. As I headed for the woods that surrounded the graveyard, some fog was building up, but the moon was very bright. I heard footsteps. They were getting louder and louder, along with the crunch of the leaves as something had approached behind me. They were moving at a very fast pace. When I heard the footsteps come near, I also heard chuckling. It sounded like Brian. I built up the nerve to yell, "Brian? That you, bro?" And it was about 3 seconds before he responded. "Yeah." I ran towards his voice and found him hiding behind an old Chevy with the windows busted out. It was all rusted all over the plants and plants had started to grow around it. "I don't think this James guy is anything to mess with," I said while trying to catch my breath. "I saw him, bro," he yelled. He seemed terrified, but was smiling for the thrill. "What do you mean?" I asked. "He was like a shadow figure, with no legs. He was floating," he said. "What?" "Believe me, bro, he was a tall guy. He looked like a shadow, and his eyes, they were just white circles. I felt like they were staring at my soul." His face had grown very serious. "Well, I'm not going to call everyone so we can regroup." "Well, I am. That's what I did." I said as I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I called Josh first. "Yeah?" he answered. "Dude, where are you?" I heard his phone drop to the ground and then disconnect. Then, off in the distance, I heard a scream and what sounded like pure fear and agony. Brian and I started sprinting in the direction of the scream. It took us 15 minutes to find him leaning against a tree, with his eyes gouged from his head. There was so much blood on his face and shirt and on the ground, we nearly puked. Carved into the tree above Josh's heads were the words, "Found number 1." I was about to cry when Brian said, "Dude, if he hasn't found us by now, that means he's after Blake."
We got our phones out and started calling them. I called Blake, the phone started to ring. Then I heard a faint hum. It was rhythmic to my phone's ringing. I followed the sound and it came to a small clearing on the ground was Blake's phone. He must have dropped it, I thought. I went over and picked it up. There was something warm and wet on it. I looked at the phone and it was covered in blood. On the screen there was something typed, but blood was in the way. I wiped the blood off on the ground leaves and the text read, "Found 2." At this point I nearly lost it. I threw the phone as far as I could and turned to Brian. There was blood.
I looked behind him and saw it, the shadow figure, the dead man named James. Brian had described the monster well, but seeing it was 1,000 times worse. I looked down and saw nothing. He was just floating midair. I looked into his eyes, and they were pure white. They seemed to pop out more because the monster was nothing but shadow. As I looked into his eyes, they were horrifying. I felt as if my soul was watched and being set on fire. I wanted to drop to my knees and just die. He had a faint smile that seemed to grow wider and wider, inhumanely wide. It was terrifying. I looked at its torso and saw something shining. It was Blake's knife from where he must have managed to stab him, but there was no blood that dripped, just a dark ooze. Then the monster ran away at a fast pace, taking Brian's corpse with him. I ran and ran and ran, but the woods seemed to have no end. When I thought I was close to escaping, I found Blaine. He didn't hide very well. He was still chuckling. "Dude, go hide somewhere else," he said. Blaine, this thing is evil. I saw him," I yelled. "What? Dude, that's pretty intense," he said with a smile. It was clear to me that he didn't know what was really going on here. Josh, Brian, and Blake are dead, and I don't know where the hell Ben is. "What?" he asked. "Dude, I'm dead serious," I yelled. I showed him the blood on my hands from earlier. His face showed horror, and he started to cry. "Oh my gosh, I gotta go," he said. I yelled, "Wait, I gotta go," he said. He started running. I ran after him. After a minute I lost him and stopped running. I heard a scream up ahead. "No," I whispered to myself. I ran to... There in front of me was Blaine's body. There was a hole in his chest that went all the way through. His heart was gone, and carved into his stomach were the words, "Found number 4." I cried. I lied on my back and just cried. You're wondering how I'm telling this to you now. I played dead for 2 days and slowly crawled an inch my way out of the woods. I'm alone in my room now recording this.